Oh, hi.
Eileen, do you know Anne?
Yes, I was just asking about Jim just before you came on. Eileen, can you hear me?
All right. When do you want to start? Any
No,
thoughts?
let's go. Let's get going.
Let's get going. Let's get this
Right?
show
You
on the
ready,
road.
Michael Lally? I mean, we have a plan, so you don't have to start yet. If you ready to get the show started, why not?
Yeah, why not? I've decided that in my own life, I currently believe that it's okay to go to meetings on Zoom 5 minutes late because they always wait 5 minutes to start. So this is reinforcing bad behavior. Do you want to make Susan a co-host and then she can admit people? You won't have to do that while reading. So anyway, hi, I'm Mindy Fullylove, and I have the joy and honor and pleasure of serving as president of the congregation of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Essex County. And welcome to our October Faith+Works meeting. This is a time when we think about what St. James said, faith without works is dead. We also believe works without faith is dead. So we ask people that we think do wonderful things in the world if they would speak about their faith and how that becomes part of how they live their lives. And it's a great thrill today to have with us two of the great people we admire, Molly Rose Kaufman and Michael Lally. So, but before we start, I'm going to do some opening words. And I just want you all to see this great book, Another Way to Play. Poems 1960 to 2017, Michael Lally. I think this is the first of 3 volumes, right, Michael? He told me once this is the first of 3 volumes. Anyway, he's been writing poems for a long time. Thank goodness for all of us. So I happened to open the book to this one, which is one of my favorites. It's called November Sonnet. On a perfectly clear fall day, heading back to Fort Monmouth, I watched as other cars on the Garden State Parkway veered onto the shoulder and stopped. The drivers not getting out, just sitting there. At the toll booth, the man said, "The president's been shot." As I drove on, more cars pulled off the road. I could see their drivers weeping. Back in the barracks, we stayed in the rec room, watching the black and white TV, tension in the room like static. When they named Lee Harvey Oswald, I watched the black guys hold their breath, hoping that meant redneck, not spade, and every muscles in their face relax when he turned out to be white. Thank you, Michael Lally, for all of your wonderful poetry and for joining us today. And I just want to do a sound check. Could everybody hear me?
Yep.
Great. Okay, great.
Excuse me, Molly.
And Susan, if you could take over admitting people while Molly's talking.
I'm trying to find that.
Sure.
I think 2 people just got in.
I think everybody's in.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's really nice to be with you all. Thanks for joining us. So I'm gonna share with you all the story of Pollyanna and just read a little bit from this truly incredible book that actually was such a pleasure to reread. And then I'm going to pass it over to Michael Lally, who has really become like such a teacher of mine and many of us around what it means to practice gratitude in such a moving and incredible way. So the story of Pollyanna, for those of you, this might be very familiar, this might be new, or it might be like a refresher. I will say that as a young child, my mom encouraged me to be like Pollyanna, and so it was a story I grew up with, but it's really been a delight to revisit. So when Pollyanna opens, really the first character we meet is this sad and grumpy aunt who has learned that she's going to have a child coming into her home. And sort of like our narrator throughout the story is this grumpy aunt's housekeeper, Nancy, who almost is like playing us, the reader, you know, and she's like, "Oh, but a little girl is coming. It's going to be so exciting." And she's like, "But what are we going to do?" this lady is so grumpy. And the aunt has a big, beautiful house, but she just wants to put Pollyanna in the hot, steamy attic. And so we know it's going to be a little rough for Pollyanna. And right away, Pollyanna, when she meets her aunt, she's just, so Pollyanna's, I'll take this back a little. She's recently orphaned, and her mom died when she was young, and she just lost her father, and her father was a missionary in the West. So she's coming from the West to a small town in Vermont to live with this grumpy aunt, but just so excited that she's going to be able to be with family instead of with the women from the church who have been raising her. And so right away when she meets her aunt, she's like, let's play the glad game. And the aunt is like, what is that? And she's like, it's a game my father taught me. And the aunt says, I don't want you to talk about your father here. The aunt's sister family was very disappointed when the sister married this very kind minister because he was very poor. They left, the sister died, she never saw her sister again. She just doesn't want to hear anything about the father. So Pollyanna is kind of like, okay, but I want to play this glad game. So Nancy, the housekeeper, is like, I'll play with you. So the glad game is something that Pollyanna's father taught her when she was a girl. She really wanted a doll, and most of what they had, they were a poor family in the West, and so most of what they had came to them through these missionary barrels that would just be sort of like a hodgepodge of stuff. So she's hoping and hoping for a doll, and instead the only thing in the barrel is a pair of crutches. And her dad says, come on, Pollyanna, we're gonna find something to be glad about in this situation. And Pollyanna is like, that's impossible. I want a doll. These are crutches. I'm a kid. And the dad says, well, how about we can be glad that you don't need to use them? And then this delights Pollyanna. And so she really commits herself to, in all situations, trying to figure out what to be glad about and really thinking about it as a game. So she comes to this small town, and it's her dream to find someone to play the glad game with. And so the first person who will play with her is the housekeeper, Nancy. But as she goes throughout the town, she's consistently connecting with people. So I'm going to read to you from when Pollyanna meets a character who she first only calls the man. When I find the page that I'm looking for. Great. The man often wore a long black coat and a high silk hat, two things that the just men never wore. His face was clean-shaven and rather pale, and his hair showing below his hat was somewhat gray. He walked erect and rather rapidly, and he was always alone, which made Pollyanna vaguely sorry for him. Perhaps it was because of this that she one day spoke to him. How do you do, sir? Isn't this a nice day? She called cheerily as she approached him. The man threw a hurried glance about him, then stopped uncertainly. Did you speak to me? He asked in a sharp voice. Yes, sir, beamed Pollyanna. I say, it's a nice day, isn't it? Humph, he grunted and strode on again. Pollyanna laughed. He was such a funny man, she thought. The next day she saw him again. 'Tisn't quite so nice as yesterday, but it's pretty nice, she called out cheerfully. Humph, grunted the man as before, and once again Pollyanna laughed happily. When for the third time Pollyanna accosted him in such a manner, the man stopped abruptly. See here, child, who are you, and why are you speaking to me every day? I'm Pollyanna Whittier, and I thought you looked lonesome. I'm so glad you stopped. Now we're introduced. Only I don't know your name yet. Well, of all the man did not finish his sentence, but strode on faster than ever. Pollyanna looked after him with a disappointed droop to her usually smiling lips. Maybe he didn't understand. But that was only half an introduction. I don't know his name yet, she murmured as she proceeded on her way. Which we'll see as sort of one of Pollyanna's very winning and consistent traits, is sort of her refusal to let anyone get off the hook with their grumpiness or dispiritedness. So the next time she encounters him, in chapter 9, which tells of the man, it rained the next time Pollyanna saw the man. She greeted him, however, with a bright smile. It isn't so nice today, is it? She called blithesomely. I'm glad it doesn't rain always anyhow. The man did not even grunt this time, nor turn his head. Pollyanna decided that, of course, he did not hear her. The next time, therefore, which happened to be the following day, she spoke up louder. She thought it particularly necessary to do this anyway, for the man was striding along, his hands behind his back and his eyes on the ground, which seemed to Pollyanna preposterous in the face of the glorious sunshine and the freshly washed morning air. Pollyanna, as a special treat, was on a morning errand today. "How do you do?" she chirped. "I'm so glad it isn't yesterday, aren't you?" The man stopped abruptly. There was an angry scowl on his face. "See here, little girl, we might as well just settle this thing right now, once and for all," he began testily. "I've got something besides the weather to think of. I don't know whether the sun shines or not." Pollyanna beamed joyously. "No, sir. I thought you didn't. That's why I told you." "Yes? Well, what?" He broke off sharply in sudden understanding of her words. "I say, that's why I told you. So you would notice it, that the sun shines and all that. I knew you'd be glad of it if you only stopped to think of it, and you didn't look a bit as if you were thinking of it." "Well, of all the..." ejaculated the man with an oddly impotent gesture. He started forward again, but after the second step, he turned back, still frowning. "See here, why don't you find someone your own age to talk to?" "I'd like to, sir, but there aren't any around here," Nancy says. "Still, I don't mind so very much. I like old folks just as well, maybe better, sometimes being used to the ladies' aid, so..." "Humph, the ladies' aid indeed. Is that what you took me for?" The man's lips were threatening to smile, but the scowl above them was still trying to hold them grimly stern. Pollyanna laughed gleefully. "Oh, no, sir, you don't look a mite like a ladies' aider. Not but that you're just as good, of course, maybe better. You see, I'm sure you're much nicer than you look." The man made a queer noise in his throat. Well, of all the... The next time Pollyanna met the man, his eyes were gazing straight into hers with a quizzical directness that made his face look really pleasant, Pollyanna thought. "Good afternoon," he greeted her a little stiffly. "Perhaps I'd better say right away that I know the sun is shining today." "But you don't have to tell me," nodded Pollyanna brightly. "I knew you knew it just as soon as I saw you." "Oh, you did you?" "Yes, sir. I saw it in your eyes, and in your smile." "Humph," grunted the man as he passed on. The man always spoke to Pollyanna after this, and frequently he spoke first, though usually he said little but good afternoon. Even that, however, was a great surprise to Nancy, who chanced to be with Pollyanna one day when the greeting was given. "Sakes alive, Miss Pollyanna," she gasped. "Did that man speak to you?" "Why, yes, he always does now," smiled Pollyanna. "He always does? Goodness! Do you know who he is?" demanded Nancy. Pollyanna frowned and shook her head. "I reckon he forgot to tell me one day. You see, I did my part of the introducing, but he didn't." So this is kind of how Pollyanna is moving through Beldingsville, Vermont, and introducing people slowly into this practice of playing the glad game with her. Everyone's still at this point to her dismay, except for Aunt Polly. But something that was really sort of... Oh, I'm looking... Okay. Something that was super interesting on reading this over the past week is just how much I think this book very consciously is about this... is very intentional about being about a spiritual practice, and very clear that the author is thinking a lot about theology and religion. Pollyanna talks a lot about the women of the Ladies' Aid, who are like the women at the church who help and provide charity, but often is confronted by their wanting to do good deeds, and also sometimes by a superficiality she'll perceive. So there's a tension drawn to these things. So here's a passage that also highlights some of that. So the reverend at the local church, Pollyanna, stumbles upon him in the woods while he's thinking, and he's feeling very frustrated by his congregation because there's a lot of infighting and people aren't really doing what they're supposed to do. They're just being cranky with each other. So he's planning to give them this very fiery brimstone sermon on Sunday to like shake them up so that they'll do what they want to do when Pollyanna finds him. And so she says to him, "Do you like being a minister?" The Reverend Paul Ford looked up now very quickly. "Do I like? Why, what an odd question. Why do you ask that, my dear?" "Nothing, only the way you looked. It made me think of my father. He used to look like that sometimes." "Did he?" The minister's voice was polite, but his eyes had gone back to the dried leaf on the ground. "Yes, and I used to ask him, just as I did you, if he was glad he was a minister." The man under the tree smiled a little sadly. "Well, what did he say?" "Oh, he always said he was, of course, but almost always he said, too, that he wouldn't stay a minister a minute if it wasn't for the rejoicing text." "The what?" The Reverend Paul Ford's eyes left the leaf and gazed wonderingly into Pollyanna's merry little face. "Well, that's what Father used to call him," she laughed. "Of course, the Bible didn't name him that, but it's all those that begin, 'Be glad in the Lord,' or 'Rejoice greatly,' or 'Shout for joy,' and all that, such a lot of them. Once, when Father felt especially bad, he counted them. There were 800 of them." 800? "Yes, that told you to rejoice and be glad. That's why Father named him the rejoicing text." "Oh." There was an odd look on the minister's face. His eyes had fallen to the words on the top paper in his hands. "But woe unto you," the page is sticking. "But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites." This is what the minister was working on, calling his congregation hypocrites. "And so your father liked those rejoicing texts," he murmured. "Oh yes," nodded Pollyanna emphatically. "He said he felt better right away. That first day he thought to count them. He said if God took the trouble to tell us 800 times to be glad and rejoice, he must want us to do it some. And Father felt ashamed that he hadn't done it more. After that, they got to be such a comfort to him. When things went wrong, when the ladies' aiders got to fight. I mean, when they didn't agree about something," corrected Pollyanna hastily. "Why, it was those texts too," Father said, "that made him think of the game. He began with me on crutches, but he said 'twas the rejoicing text that started him on it." So Pollyanna's like kind of having a great time. She gets her aunt to welcome a cat and dog into the house. Her aunt finally lets her move downstairs into a nice bedroom. She can leave the stuffy attic. She has friends all over town. She's going to school when she's hit by a car and becomes bedridden. And she is not able to walk, and she finds out that she might not ever be able to walk again, and she's having so much she can't find anything to be glad about. She's just really, really stuck. So the remarkable thing that happens is that all these people who's just been going around town meeting, it's also a small town, so everyone's talking. So everybody knows now that Pollyanna is stuck home, and not just that she's stuck home and might not walk again, but that she can't find anything to be glad about. So people keep coming to the house every day, much to the surprise of Aunt Polly, who's like, who are all these people? And what is this game that they're talking about? And so finally, Polly's like, and everyone's telling Aunt Polly, like, please tell Pollyanna, this thing happened and we're glad about it. And so finally, Polly is like, what is this game? She gets the scoop from Nancy, of course. So here, I'll read a little example of someone coming to the home. And this is a woman, they make it clear that she's kind of like, the aunt is a little judgy of her. She's like a lower class woman coming to the house and like wearing makeup and stuff. It seems to be scandalizing Aunt Polly. "My name is Mrs. Payson, Mrs. Tom Payson. I presume you've heard of me. Most of the good people in town have, and maybe some of the things you've heard ain't true. But never mind that. It's about the little girl I came. I heard about the accident, and it broke me all up. Last week I heard how she couldn't ever walk again, and I wished I could give up my 2 uselessly well legs for hers. She'd do more good trotting around than I could in 100 years. Uh, Maybe you don't know it, but I've seen a good deal of that little girl of yours. We live on Pendleton Hill Road, and she used to go by often, only she didn't always go by. She came in and played with the kids and talked to me and my man when he was home. She seemed to like it and to like us. She didn't know, I suspect, that her kind of folks don't generally call on my kind. Maybe if they did call more, Miss Harrington, there wouldn't be so many of my kind, she added with a sudden bitterness. Be that as it may, she came, and she didn't do herself no harm, and she did us good, a lot of good. How much she won't know, nor can't know. Well, we've heard now that she's fretting her poor little life out of her, because she can't play it no more. That there's Pollyanna makes you cry.
Really does.
Anyway, because she can't play it no more, that there's nothing to be glad about. And that's what I came to tell her today. That, that maybe she can be a little glad for us, because we've decided to stick to each other and play the game ourselves. I knew she would be glad, because she used to feel kind of bad at things we said sometimes, just how the game is going to help us. I can't say that I exactly see yet, but it will. Anyhow, we're going to try, because she wanted us to. Will you tell her? So then Polly's like, what's the deal, Nancy? What's the game? And Nancy tells a story about the missionary bell and the crutches. At this point, everyone in town knows this, and Nancy says, I know it does sound nutty, ma'am, but let me tell you, that blessed lamb found out I hated Monday morning, something awful, and what does she up and tell me one day but this? Well, anyhow, Nancy, I should think you could be gladder on Monday morning than any other day in the week, because 'twould be a whole week before you'd have another one. And I'm blessed if I thought about that every Monday morning since, and it has helped me, man. It made me laugh. Anyhow, every time I thought of it, and laughing helps, you know, it does. And then Nancy says, oh, everybody knows it now, I guess. Anyhow, I should think they did from the way I'm hearing of it everywhere I go. Of course, she told a lot, and they told the rest. Them things go, you know, when they get started. And she was always so smiling and pleasant to everyone, and so just glad herself all the time, that they couldn't help knowing it anyhow. Now since she's hurt, everybody feels so bad, especially when they heard how bad she feels, because she can't find anything to be glad about. And so they've been coming every day to tell her how glad she's made them, hoping that'll help some. You see, she's always wanted everybody to play the game with her. Well, I know someone who will play it now, choked Miss Polly. So then Polly goes to see Pollyanna and says, okay. Okay, I'm gonna start. So Polly tells her what Mrs. Payson said about how she and her husband are staying together and they're going to be playing the game. And Pollyanna says, oh, I'm so glad. Then they'll be there when I go up to see. Oh dear, broke off the little girl miserably. Polly, why can't I remember that my legs don't go anymore and that I won't ever go up to see Mr. Pendleton again? There, don't, choked her aunt. Perhaps you'll drive up sometime. But listen, I haven't told you yet all that Mrs. Payson said. She wanted me to tell you that they were going to stay together and to play the game just as you wanted them to. Did they really? Oh, I am glad of that. Yes, she said she'd hope you'd be. That's why she told you, to make you glad, Pollyanna. Pollyanna looked up quickly. Why, Aunt Polly, you just spoke as if you knew. Do you know about the game, Aunt Polly? Yes, dear. Miss Polly sternly forced her voice to be cheerfully matter-of-fact. Nancy told me. I think it's a beautiful game. I'm going to play it now with you. Oh, Aunt Polly, you? I'm so glad. You see, I really wanted you most of anybody all the time. Aunt Polly caught her breath a little sharply. It was even harder this time to keep her voice steady, but she did it. Yes, dear, and there are all those others too. Why, Pollyanna, I think the whole town is playing the game now with you. Even the minister. I haven't had a chance to tell you yet, but this morning I met Mr. Ford when I was down to the village, and he told me to say to you that just as soon as you could see him, he was coming to tell you that he hadn't stopped being glad over those 800 rejoicing texts you told him about. So you see, dear, it's just that you have done it. The whole town is playing the game, and the whole town is wonderfully happier. And all because of one little girl who taught the people in the game how to play it. Pollyanna clapped her hands. Oh, I'm so glad she cried. Then suddenly a wonderful light illumined, illumined her face. Why, Aunt Polly, there is something I can be glad about after all. I can be glad I've had my legs anyway, else I couldn't have done that. So anyway, it was such a delight to reread this book and really think about how much I think the author was really thinking about so much about spirituality and also about community and connection, because it's so profound how in the end it was just too hard for Pollyanna and everybody really needed to come and be with her. So this is Pollyanna, and that's so you guys have this background for our talk, Pollyanna for Cynics. And now I'm gonna turn it over to our dear friend Michael Lally, who this is a quote that came to us from Michael Lally via my mother, which is that she told Aubrey, Doug, and Holly and I the other day. You know, Michael Lally says you have to say thank you if you get a check, and you have to say thank you if you get a bill. And so we've all been really meditating on that a lot, and it's really been a theme of our fall is what is that? How do we say thank you for a bill? And so we're so excited to have you with us, Michael Lally. And I know you recently watched Pollyanna, so it's fresh in our hearts.
It is indeed. Thank you so much, Molly, for your invitation. I thought you were just going to ask me some questions and be like a little interview.
Oh yeah.
I've never read the book Pollyanna or any of the books that followed. Excuse me, but I have trouble with my voice, so I hope you all can hear me. I'll do my best to speak it as loudly as I can. I hadn't read the books and I hadn't seen the movie, but I'd heard that term all my life because people would apply it to me. There were plenty of times, decades, when I spent a lot of time in my head being angry and resentful and judgmental and fearful and anxious and depressed. But I was able to maintain the childish delight I had as a little kid to be alive and to be experiencing the world. Unfortunately, when I would express that enthusiasm, people would often throw out that term Pollyanna or Pollyannish. I did everything I could to present an image of something different. I was a sweet, smart, cute little boy. And I became a kind of street character, you know. You got a fucking problem, motherfucker. That kind of stuff. Protect myself. And I became a writer. I also worked in the other arts. I was a musician and an actor, and I would often be criticized for that Pollyanna quality. So I assumed all my life I didn't know the story of this little girl. But I did assume, because I was often accused of it, that it meant I was too sentimental. In my working class Jersey Irish clan, sentimental Irishman was a common phrase that was used. And when people got drunk at parties, they'd sometimes fight, but they just as often weep. I had a brother who was a cop, and he'd, get all teary-eyed because one of our grandmothers, our mother's mother, lived with us for about 12 people at any given time in a 3-bedroom house. Figure that out. We use the attic, obviously. But he would get drunk and be, oh, poor grandma, she's not going to last that long, you know, just get all what they call maudlin. So I thought of that. I thought defensively, like, what the fuck is wrong with feeling sentiments? And I went through the world most of my life being angry at that kind of accusation. People accuse me of it all the time and still do, because I've become even more like that. Now, a lot of that is a result of privilege. I live on a pension now, first time in my adult life. I have a steady income that I can count on. I'm not in any kind of intimate live-in relationship. I faced death a few times, more often in recent years, and I've come to accept it. So age has given me some privilege. So there's a lot of ways I could see people could criticize that attitude. But the deeper truth is, it makes me happy. I'm happy almost all the fucking time. I don't mean to curse at your spiritual gathering, but what are curses? Just language that people use. It offends some people. I'm so sorry, but a lot about me offends a lot of people. A lot about each of us offends other people. Are we supposed to recreate ourselves into something we aren't? I don't think so. I think the intention is to be as truly ourselves as we can be. I fought it all my life out of fear and competition. You know, I gotta, who's making it? Well, I gotta be like, I gotta do what they're doing. 10 rules to this, 10 steps to that, you know, etc. How to be a success, how to do this, how to do that. The key for me has been surrendering to the now, which is the heart of, I think, all spiritual paths. Living in this moment, not having any part of your mind trying to rewrite the past. The past is with me. It's in me all the time. The name of one of my books is It's Not Nostalgia, because I was always accused of that too. Went right along with the Pollyanna shit. Oh, you're so nostalgic. I'm not nostalgic. My dead Irish immigrant grandfather lives in me. I'm not thinking about the past. I'm living it in my heart. It's a part of me. If I want to rewrite the past, I can do that too. I'm a writer. But if I want to waste time in my head, rewrite, oh, I should have said this, should have done that, why didn't I do this? That's a waste of time. And the same with the projection in the future. I can make plans. But I want to accept the reality of where I am now. I might not like it and want to change it. And I did that most of my life too. But I did it sometimes self-righteously. And I'd have an experience that would make me a little more humble. Humility, as I've come to understand it, just means reality. I'm an old man. When I say I'm an old man, a lot of people say, oh, you're not old, Michael. You're so young. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm 79. I've become what the doctors call physical decline. Fortunately, it's been recently diagnosed as Parkinson's, and you know, there's some solutions to that. When I got the Parkinson's diagnosis, I just felt like I did exactly that Pollyanna thing. I felt glad. Oh, I got a name for what's going on, and it's not a death sentence. When I got cancer at the early part of the century, one of my mentors, who was a writer, older than me, who always had the right word when I was going through something, said to me, Michael, I don't know what to say. There are no words. Exactly what I needed somebody to say. Because everybody else was saying, oh, you should try this, you should try that. Oh, it's not that bad. No, I got fucking cancer and I got a wife and a little kid, as well as 2 older kids and grandkids from a previous wife. We spent 6 years in a coma, and every time, every time people would give me shit about this Pollyanna stuff, I'd say, my kid's mother's in a coma. I got this, I got that. I've been shot at, I've been stabbed, The fuck, man? Just because I look pretty and white, whatever the issue is, doesn't mean I haven't experienced life. I can't hardly use my hand and I'm weak. So I have trouble opening a bag of chips. I live by myself, but I'm about tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm getting up and moving to upstate New York, where I'm going to live with an older child and his partner. And because my kids don't want me to live alone, because I can't do a lot of things. But the fact is, when nobody's around, if it takes me 25 minutes to pull my pants on, so what? If somebody's waiting in the other room, I feel a little self-conscious. And then I gotta be glad I can get my pants on all by myself. Fuck you guys. Sorry about that language. It's just my manner. Like Pollyanna's manner was to be so sweet and friendly. I think I was like that as a kid. I think probably most of us were, unless we had like some really bad trauma pre-childhood, like infant, which some shrinks have deduced I have. But I accept, okay, possibly not, I don't remember. Who cares? I'm here now. And that little boy, I want to give that little boy the opportunity to grow up and be with me now, and have a good time. Look at all you people. Some of you I know, and I love you. The rest of you I don't know, but for some weird reason I love you just because you're on that screen. I mean, I'm looking at the miracle of this. We're all on our own. I mean, people complaining about Zoom and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I was a boy in the 40s before we had TV. And when those little TV comes out, they were about 13 inches. And they had all these knobs my father didn't know how to use. I don't know. I don't know how they do it. I don't want to know how they do it. How they get them people in that little box, And you have to turn knobs to keep it from going this way and that way and so on and so forth. Now we're doing this. What's not to be glad about? I spoke once with Howard Zinn, who many of you probably know. Wonderful man, wonderful writer. We shared a podium at Cooper Union. Big crowd for him, of course. I had just had a book-length poem come out that I finished writing the night before we invaded Iraq. That just raised a lot of questions and prophesied pretty much everything that happened. But in the answer and question thing later, we had a disagreement about perspective because I had this Pollyannish quality. And I was saying, yeah, this stuff is still going on, but my grandfather, not my ancestors, my grandfather, when I knew him, was a very rough guy, but I loved him anyway. He was born in a dirt floor, thatched roof, moldy little cottage or whatever you want to call it, hut in Ireland in the 1800s and grew up there. I saw it before it crumbled. As long as there was a fire in it, stayed intact for hundreds of years. My father dropped out of 7th grade to go to work. I'm so much better off than both of them. Some people are worse off. Some people in our clan are worse off. Some people are a lot better off than me. but I can't deny the gifts that I've received and pretend that that's not real. And afterwards, he invited me over to his apartment for dinner. And there were some people from Brooklyn and from Jersey, old friends who were there to see me and wanted to go out to dinner with me. And I said, I'm sorry, but these old friends I haven't seen want me to go to dinner with them, and there's too many to invite to your apartment. And people said to me, the fuck is wrong with you? You had the chance to go and hang out with Howard's in his apartment and talk and stuff. Maybe I'll get another chance. But the same thing, the thing that came from my decision is to try and make the choice for love in every situation was to think, what's the most loving thing to do? It's to be with those people. I remember the story about, do you all remember that writer? He wrote Hawaii and all those books about places. Michener, was his name Michener?
James Mitchell.
Thank you. I read a story about him. I actually wrote it for a publishing company I was working for. I researched it. His first book was Tales of the South Pacific,
Oh, yeah.
which
In South Pacific.
he was a poor kid. He was a foundling, and he was taken in by the woman in the small town in Pennsylvania, I think it was, who took in the foundlings and raised them. And the oldest one, before they moved away, would teach the youngers how to read and read to them every night. That's where he got his interest. And he got to go to college and studied history and became a historian in the Navy during World War II and flew around to the islands recording the history of the battles and the people. And out of it came this book, Tales of the South Pacific. It didn't do very well. And they forgot about it and he went to work for a publisher. And sometime in the 50s, this is post-World War II in the 40s, sometime in the early 50s, he found out that whatever that writing team of musicals was that made the musical South Pacific wanted to make a musical out of it. They were told, you're crazy, nobody wants to see a musical about World War II. But they wrote it, and the night before it opened, they invited him down, insisted he come down to the theater because they realized they were going to have a hit. And they rewrote the contract so he'd get a third of everything.
Wow.
And then he was free to leave his job at the publishers and write these books. And he wanted to write books about people that were in other places or looked different to try and get people. His wife was Japanese post World War II. He wanted to make a bridge, in his work. And so he got invited as some big award winner by President Johnson to a dinner at the White House on the same night that woman who had taken the foundlings in, they were celebrating her, 83rd or 90th birthday or something, having a dinner. And he wrote and said, I'm sure among the many luminaries at your dinner, I won't be missed, but I would at hers. And he turned it down. That makes me choke up, you know what I mean? And it made me choke up when I was a kid. But in between, I had to put on all this armor to try and defend myself. And I had to shut my heart like it was steel safe, not understanding that all the pain I was in most of my life came from slamming my heart shut. Because the source of my joy, and I believe of happiness anyway, I worked in Hollywood. I had my modicum of success. Believe me, we all know having the money does not guarantee happiness. Having the fame does not guarantee happiness. Having the right partner and the home and your car and yet None of that stuff does. What guarantees happiness isn't even all you people loving me. If I'm depressed, what I now call deep disappointment, because it makes me focus on the source for me. I'm not a doctor, I'm not talking about that. Just saying the way I use the expression. When everybody's in the room says, "We love you, Michael," might make me feel a teeny weeny bit better, but not very much. But if I open my heart and let myself love you, I'm fucking happy. It's pretty obvious, it seems to me, and it's in all the great spiritual books, but I couldn't get it. I couldn't see it through all my intellect and complexity and emotional, roller coaster and fireworks and all the rest. That's why people like to look at, I'm just me, but it's my opinion. It's why people like to look at those little kitties on Zoom, and why most people respond to babies. Some people not, but most of us see a little baby going, "Goochie, goochie, goo," and we're like, "Oh," and we feel suddenly relieved of all the tension and anxiety and depression for a few seconds. Because our heart opened to the baby, our heart opened to the kitten. At least that's what I feel. So I got to practice keeping my heart open. And I do it by looking for the glad, like Pollyanna. I've been living in that apartment in an old house in downtown Maplewood for the last 15 years. And every morning, because I'm right next to restaurants, every morning at 5, I think it doesn't happen on Sundays, I can't remember. Every morning at 5 o'clock, the garbage trucks come. And my initial response is to be, my initial impulse is to be aggravated. Go, "God damn, those trucks waking me up." But I trained myself to go, as soon as I start to feel aggravated, I go, "Oh, isn't it cool? I live in a kind of urban environment right in downtown Maplewood. It's kind of romantic." And I can go back to sleep anyway. I'm an old guy. But ever since I made the decision to move to upstate New York, which is happening tomorrow morning, I'm in the midst of packing. As you can see, I got a lot of books still to go. Ever since I made that decision, the garbage trucks come at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, the impulse is to go, and be aggravated. And instead I go, well, pretty soon I won't have to put up with this shit. That's what I'm talking about. My friend was talking about when he said, if you get a check in the mail, I needed $200 at the time. I was a single dad with 2 kids and without a car in LA, in debt, no work. I needed $200. And I said, I was whining about it to him. And he said, "Well, if you get a check in the mail for $200, Michael, get down on your knees and thank God for the blessing. But if you get another bill in the mail for $200, get down on your knees and thank God for the blessing." And my response was, "Fuck you. What does that mean?" But over time, I got to get what he meant. It's not about that. I'm not thankful that I have more debt accrued and have to work more. I'm thankful that I'm alive, that I'm in the process, and that I've got a philosophy that makes me see it as a good thing. I see my Parkinson's as a good thing. Somebody came to visit me, I think yesterday, and said, "Don't you get sad? Does getting old make you sad?" And I'm like, not at all. I'm digging the hell out of it. I wouldn't be digging the hell out of it if I was in LA getting a fish job and running behind cars on highways trying to get young by sucking in carbon dioxide or whatever, whatever the hell my friends are doing out there. No, but accepting it makes me so, accepting the reality of it and still going for what's the glad? What's the joy in this situation? People are showing me all kinds of love. I don't like it. I'm a guy. I'm a street guy. It's part of my personality, even if I created it. So when Molly says Michael teacher or Michael said this, it makes me feel so uncomfortable. It's like, oh God, I can't live up to that. Let me go and hide. But by accepting people's help, I'm being of service to them. They get a chance. It's another thing my friend taught me. Somebody gave me a gift and I said, I can't take this. And he said, you have to accept gifts. Otherwise you're like interfering with the other person's spiritual growth.
Mm.
So people have been coming over, give me hugs and give me gifts. I'm like, giving me a gift. I'm trying to get rid of shit. I'm moving. But thank you very much. I don't say that. Yeah, I got a little carried away. Sorry, but you can see how interviews go with me. All I have to do is push the record button, and I'm gone. And that's another pleasure of being old. Put up with it. It's a act of charity to listen to old people.
But it was our plan anyway, Michael, not an interview. Just I'm going to read Pollyanna and then you're going to reflect. So
Mindy made me watch the movie and I'm watching it and I'm thinking, corny Disney. I'm watching it for the actors, and the acting and the things I know about the art of filmmaking. But by about halfway through, I was hooked. And when it ended, I sobbed. Something I'm grateful I can do. I remember the first time I sobbed. I was in my 40s. I sat up in the middle of my bed in the middle of the night and I sobbed. And I asked that older writer the next day, what the fuck do you think that was about? He said you were finally crying for the little boy. Because I was raised to not cry. I'm a guy. If I feel like crying, I hit somebody. Which is so silly and sounds bizarre and exaggerated, but it's true. My older kids were arguing one time in my room in Santa Monica. And my son and I were getting in a big argument, and my daughter started crying. And I punched a hole in the wall next to my son's head, which of course I apologized for profusely and never did again. But I got so upset when I saw her crying, I felt like I had to kill somebody. Don't be making my daughter cry. And of course I did it for her. One time, we lived in New York in the 70s, a guy started cursing in a bodega and I grabbed him and threw him up against the wall. Said, motherfucker, you don't fucking curse in front of my goddamn daughter, you fuck. And I thought it was a funny joke. And I said it once in front of my daughter and she said it wasn't funny to me. We live a life. We do good things and bad things. But every day, every moment is an opportunity to adjust the karma a little. And I'm just so fucking grateful to have had some time and hopefully a lot more to keep working on that karma, keep balancing that out. So I owe you all, even though you don't know it. What time does this thing go to, Molly?
Well, Michael, we usually go to about 5. So we were thinking of a poem, and I don't know if you have it near you or if it's in.
I don't.
Okay, perfect. Good. Because I requested Michael Lally read a poem that I wanted to hear him read. So should we have a poem and then we'll see if any of our people who are with us want to share anything before we go?
I don't have the poem.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Do you have is it in this one, the one about how love never dies?
Yes, of course.
Of course. Okay. Luckily, my mom has it and she's going to read it for us.
Oh, but Michael. Oh, there it is. 444.
Would you like to read it?
I love reading this poem. And Michael said the last time I read it that it was fun to listen to somebody read it besides him. I hope you think it's fun again, Michael. I love reading this poem, which is called Love Never Dies. Lots of shit dies. Love doesn't. Parts of me are already dead, but love isn't. My appendix, dead and buried. My prostate and a disc from my back, dead and gone too. And parts of my brain, cut out with the dime-sized foreign body that got in there somehow to cause so much trouble. The Twin Towers died, and all those lost with them, like a woman who was kind to me when she didn't have to be, gone on one of those two planes, but my love for her isn't. 5 of my siblings and our old man and ma passed on now for a while, but not the love we shared when we were honest. The mother of my oldest kids, my first wife, gone, but the love she and I shared never died, though maybe the like did. My first true love too, the love of my life, gone now for almost a decade, but my love for her and hers for me never died, even through all of our husbands and wives and lovers over the years when we were out of touch with each other. None of that stopped the love we both felt and affirmed whenever we spoke again, like the week before she passed, still working to help troubled kids find families. Those kids, still grateful for the love she showed them, that's still alive, even if she's with the ancestors now. Or other women I've lived with who passed on, or lovers long gone, like Joan B. or Joe B. Her face so sweet and tough, voice still admonishing me to just be myself, not worry what others think. His voice so quiet and stuttering in my ear as I write this. His image on my bookshelves with his books, his art on my walls. I only wish he'd lived long enough to see it didn't matter how famous he did or didn't become. His work living on among us who love it, exhibit it often when he passed. Or Tony gone so recently, a young man who went from ripping doors off their hinges when he was upset with his wife and kids, to the gentlest giant of many I've known. His ex-skinhead rages transformed as he turned the pages of his life from anger to compassion. His punk Buddhist practice enabling him to live with the rare brain disease that took his physical presence from us, but not the love we who knew him shared. I think of him every day, as I do a lot who live now only in our hearts. Oh, lots of shit dies, like almost everything that was new when I was a boy, including the people. If you live long enough, so much passes, it feels like another world. But it's the same one where love never dies.
That's deep. That's deep.
Thank you, Mandy.
That hits you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Michael and Molly.
Yes.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you,
Yeah,
Michael.
thank you,
Very
Molly.
good.
Thank you, Michael.
Very good.
Molly.
We'll miss you, Mike.
I'm not that far away. It's a couple of 3 hours.
You know, the miracle of Zoom.
And the miracle of Zoom. I can't do the Zoom from my end, but if you send me one simple link, I can hit it.
Deal. You
Um,
got a deal.
if we have, as Molly said, perhaps people had some thoughts they wanted to share about this very special service, Pollyanna for Cynics. I hope all of people who were Cynics are leaving converted.
That's all it takes, you know? That's it.
One service. Converted to the glad game.
I find it was really, for me, touching, because after dealing with the death of my loved one, this really, really hit me. And I love the way Mike himself brought out the spirituality part of it. So it's really, really touching for me. Really touching. This was one of the best Thanks, Molly. One of the best.
Thank you, Myrna.
Thanks, Myrna.
You too, Mike.
Thank you, Myrna.
I had the same experience Michael had decades ago, where people would constantly tell me like it was something negative. Oh, you're
Yeah.
just a Pollyanna. You're just a Pollyanna. And I got so tired of hearing that I went to my local library and I had them get the original copy of Pollyanna, which was 1913. I think I said, Michael, I looked it up, 1913, and read it. And I thought, okay, I'll be a Pollyanna. I can't get this to go off my screen now.
13.
So yeah, and then I lost it. So I've been visiting Michael so I can get it back.
Oh,
Love you, Michael.
Love you too, man.
Yeah, let's see the people.
Okay, I just have to.
My youngest son had learning disabilities and the school wouldn't recognize it. Nobody would recognize it. I met him on a train going into New York, and she teaches teachers, and she said now and then tutors. She said she tutored him. First thing she did was give him I think it was 7 intelligence, right? And said something like 5 of them you're above average, and the other 2 you're fine. So the
Yeah.
school doesn't know what it's talking about. He still can't write a check, but he's one of the most brilliant 24-year-olds you want to meet.
see?
He gets all his learning off his phone. You know, I didn't get mad at him when he'd be on the phone all the time, because he's listening to some podcast or learning something. Not always, but often. Anyway, then helped him a lot.
And then Michael found the way for Flynn to be educated and to get a degree. He got his
No,
but found the way for him to be educated that worked for him, which is
Yeah.
what schools don't do.
yeah.
So yeah.
Susanna, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank all of you for putting this together. I didn't think I could attend. I'm Susanna Caparis. But, you know, this talk on today at 4:00 that I thought I couldn't even attend, it turned out to be a real life changer for me. I saw the Pollyanna movie for the first time last night. By the way, I was never called a Pollyanna. Okay, Michael can attest to that. But my knowing Michael has brought me closer, right? And I hope someday to be accused of being a Pollyanna. But I saw the movie last night because this was coming, this talk was coming, and it was the most beautiful movie. What a beautiful soul, you know. I was so moved, you know, and I just want to share this really quick. And I live by Orange Park, and there's a lot of swans that land in the pond in the back. And honestly, you know, like they're beautiful, but they're also a nuisance. And when I go walk in the park and everybody walks in the park, there's bird shit everywhere, you know. Anyway, my heart got soft over this one swan that was sitting there at the beginning of the summer, and geese. And it was standing on one foot and its other foot was mangled, you know, and there were a bunch of us that were running around. It really, there was nothing that I thought we could do. And during Ida, I was in a hospital. My mom was very, very sick, and I had to stay in the hospital, and the wind was blowing and the floods were everywhere. And I started thinking about all the animals in the park, and I started to cry, thinking that they would be destroyed, in the storm. This week, even in my grief and my sadness over my mother's passing, I walked by the park, and guess who's standing on one leg? Eating. Like when we lose things, we don't lose everything. And we don't lose the things that we think we're going to lose. It turned out that somebody had scooped up that bird and brought it out to the Raptor Trust. They amputated his legs so it wouldn't cause gangrene, and they brought it back to be with its mate. That duck is out there right now as we speak. I want to be a Pollyanna when I grow up. Thank you, Michael.
I feel I should mention in closing, I don't know if I shared this, it's not the point of the story by any means, but in case it's on anyone's mind, there is a doctor in the town who also happened to be Aunt Polly's ex-lover, and so obviously they're going to get back together, which is makes Aunt Polly very happy, and this doctor also does love Pollyanna so much and find a way to cure her legs. So at the end of the book, she has taken 10 steps, just in case that was...
Thank you.
In case anyone needed to hear that before we go.
Happy ending, which this is.
Yes, if anybody needed that.
Yeah, it's a Disney movie.
Dr. Chilton, yes.
No, it's in the book.
Mm-hmm. It is in the book.
In Disney, she doesn't walk. In the Disney movie, she hasn't
No,
walked.
but I don't think they would have done the movie of the book if the book had ended on a sour note.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Michael, you're Hollywood, so you know these things.
Yeah, I always get aggravated when I see movies like that one that had Javier or whatever his name is going around killing people. No Country for Old Men or whatever the hell it was. Mm-hmm. Every working class person, it seemed to me, in that movie was mean or sour or angry or depressed. I'm like, I grew up in a working class neighborhood. There were a couple of grumpy people. But there was a lot of joy. When I found out about Marxism, I remember a cousin of mine who grew up next door to me, got kicked out of high school in 10th grade for getting a ninth grader pregnant. And they stayed married for 50 years or whatever, had kids. He just worked at the A&P all his life. And I got to college on the GI Bill after 4 years in the military. And I discovered Marx. So I was explaining to that cousin the class thing, which I truly believe in, and think it explains a lot of what was going on in our clan. But he turned to me and said, yeah, maybe that's all true, Mike, but you really think rich people are happy? I mean, I don't think they're as happy as we are. And he worked for them, like I did. My father had a home repair business in South Orange. So we worked in pretty much every fancy house in South Orange back then. There's a lot of truth to it. A lot of my most famous friends are not that happy because all they got to pay attention to. I used to think I wanted that, and then I was like, thank you, Jesus, or God, or what, Buddha. Well, Buddha's not a God. Allah, whatever it is your taste. Goddesses. Whatever. You've seen that TED talk by that neuroscientist woman who had a stroke and fell against the wall. And her scientific mind was thinking, oh, geez, I'm having a stroke. And her creative mind was thinking, wow, I can see the molecules changing places from my arm to the wall. So cool, right? We're all part of that. We're all part of it. You're all my fellow molecules, man. That's cool as hell.
I Michael. That was the first TED Talk I had ever seen. Back when I didn't know about TED Talks.
Brilliant, right?
Yeah, that really that moved me. My name's Aya, and I've met you at some Molly Rose shows, and some of you here too, but I'm Molly and Mindy's friend. And when you were talking about, I'm a cynic, and I feel I am scared every day. It's like the past few months, I'm just having this outer body experience, seeing myself and seeing my heart get more and more, like you said, like steeled up. And this talk really, your words and your stories really, and your reading, Molly, and poem, Mindy, just really warmed my heart that much more, and I'm so grateful for being here with all of you. Thank you.
Well, it's been a wonderful hour. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Michael, thank you. It was really quite a blessing. I feel really blessed. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Just so glad we could be together for this. We all needed that, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
And Michael, what they say is traveling mercies. And we got a plan B, so there you go. So we'll see everybody in November. Listen in November. It's going to be a great Faith+Works. Kent Marlowe, who was in Sunday school with me at First UU, and who was the coolest guy, is going to come and give the Faith+Works. So it's going to be really fun. So kind of a First UU Sunday school reunion day. So please come. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Blessings, everyone.
Hey.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Mindy. Thank you, Molly.
Eileen, so good to
Thanks,
see you.
Michael.
Hi, Eileen.
Good to see you
Bye,
too.
Molly. Bye, Mindy. Talk to you later.
Bye, Janine.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Margot, thank you, Margot.
I like the theme music.
To go out. You go off on.
Exit track.
Okay. That sounds great.
I gotta go
Margot,
back.
Michael's a jazz musician.
Ah, I didn't know that, Michael. Really?
Yeah, I can't do it much anymore, but yeah, most of it.
Wow, I didn't know that about you. Great.
I play piano and a little bass and some other instruments.
Oh, wonderful.
For years, I put myself down.
Oh,
I read a bio and I had written in a poetry anthology in 1968.
oh,
I looked it up the other day, and in it I said something about playing jazz, and I said poorly. What we do to ourselves.
I'd love to hear you. Do you have any recordings?
No. There's a couple of snippets online of me playing piano in various situations. Usually before a talk at the Neighborhood Ethical Society.
Oh,
I would sit down and play the piano before the talks, and that's been recorded a few times. I don't know how to find them.
we should.
I gotta go pack.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you
everybody.
so much.
Love you all.
Thank you, Michael. Love you, Margot.
Love you,
Thank
Margot.
you. Love you. Love you, Molly. Thank you, Molly and Michael. Okay. Thank you for this wonderful show.